You ever have that feeling? You're with someone you absolutely adore, someone whose company you genuinely love, but after a couple of hours, you feel this almost physical need to get away, to just find a quiet room, lock the door, and sit in total silence. It's such a weird paradox, right? And what usually comes right after that urge to escape? A huge wave of guilt. You start questioning yourself, thinking, what is wrong with me? Am I bad at loving someone? Well, let me just say the answer is a huge no. This has nothing to do with the failure of your heart. It's all about a feature of your brain's actual hardware. You might just be what we're going to call a lone walker. And the reason you crave that quiet is buried in some really fascinating neuroscience, which is exactly what we're going to break down today. All right, so let's dive right into the science behind that brain of yours. It really all boils down to a single concept that explains why you might be processing the world just a little bit differently than most people. So, psychologists have this term leaky sensory gating, and they found it's often linked with high intelligence and creativity. Think of it like this. Most brains are really good at just ignoring stuff. They have a built-in spam filter that automatically tunes out the hum of the fridge or the ticking of a clock so they can focus on the main event. And this is where the difference is absolutely massive. A typical brain just filters out a ton of that sensory information. But if you have leaky sensory gating, your brain is like a sieve with much bigger holes. It just takes it all in. Every tiny shift in your partner's tone of voice, every little micro-expression that flashes across their face, every background noise in the room, it all gets registered and processed. You are literally taking in more data every single second. Now, the thing is, this makes you incredibly perceptive and insightful, but it definitely comes with a price: cognitive overload. For you, just being with another person isn't simply hanging out. On a brain level, it's an intense, high-bandwidth data processing task that just eats up a ton of your mental energy. But this isn't just some random quirk of modern life. There's actually a really compelling evolutionary theory that suggests this trait might be wired into us from way, way back in our ancestral history. It's a fascinating idea called the Savanna Theory of Happiness. Research actually shows that for highly intelligent people, more social time can lead to lower life satisfaction. Now, why on earth would that be? Well, the theory goes that historically, these were the tribe's problem solvers, the inventors, the strategic hunters, the planners. Their main value came from their ability to focus deeply on complex problems, and that kind of work required long, uninterrupted stretches of solitude. And this just reframes the entire experience, doesn't it? For the lone walker, solitude isn't about being lonely, it's a biological necessity. It's regulation. It's the only time your brain can finally stop processing that fire hose of external data and switch into what's called its default mode network. And that's the crucial brain state where you process your thoughts, consolidate your identity, and basically find yourself again. Okay, so you've got this deep internal need, right? It's baked into your brain by both neuroscience and evolution. But the problem is, this internal need can create a really common and really painful external problem in your relationships. And here it is, the absolute heart of the conflict. Your partner doesn't feel your brain getting overloaded, they just see you pulling away. So when your system is crashing and you need that reboot, they don't see a biological need. They feel an emotional rejection. I mean, from their point of view, it feels incredibly personal. The story their brain starts telling them is simple and it's painful. They're tired of me. They don't want to be here anymore. I'm being pushed away. Meanwhile, what's happening inside your head couldn't be more different. In that moment, you probably aren't even thinking about them in a negative way at all. You're just desperately trying to turn down the volume of the world, Just stop the flood of information so you can actually hear your own thoughts again and feel like a person. And if this whole dynamic isn't talked about, if it's just left in the dark, it creates this devastating feedback loop. You pull away to get the mental oxygen you biologically need. They sense that distance as a threat to the relationship, so they cling tighter to try and feel secure again. And that, of course, just makes you feel even more suffocated, so you push away even harder, and you can see how that cycle just spirals, often until the relationship breaks. So how do you stop that cycle? Well, the solution is actually pretty simple, but it does require you to consciously redefine what spending time together can look like. The key is to introduce and normalize this idea of parallel play. You see kids do it all the time, and it's an incredibly healthy thing for adult relationships too, especially for this dynamic. It's really the art of being alone together, sharing a physical space, feeling that connection, but without the cognitive drain of constant, direct interaction. So how do you actually do this? Okay, 3 steps. Step 1, explain your brain's wiring with a simple metaphor, like a social battery. You could say, my battery charges up in silence, while yours might charge up through conversation. Step 2, and this is crucial, frame it as your need, not their fault. It's about you managing your energy. And finally, step 3, be the one to propose a solution. Say, hey, how about we just read on the couch together for a bit? Or let's put on some music while I mess around on my laptop. And look, if you need a really powerful line you can use, try some version of this. I need 30 minutes of quiet right now so that I can recharge and have the energy to love you properly. Think about what that does. It states the need clearly. it gives a time frame, and most importantly, it frames the solitude as something you're doing for the relationship, not as a way to escape from it. Let's just wrap this all up with one final and I think really empowering thought. If any of this sounds like you, please know this is not a flaw you need to fix. It's a fundamental part of who you are. So maybe the biggest takeaway here is this. Stop apologizing for how you're wired. If you are a lone walker, the depth of your mind simply requires periods of distance. Your insight, your creativity, your intelligence, all of that needs silence to really work at its best. Protecting your solitude isn't selfish, it's essential maintenance. In the end, this isn't about pushing love away. It's about creating just enough quiet space to process the world, to hear yourself think, and to come back to the people you love as a whole, present, and loving person. Because it's in the quiet that you remember who you are. So that leaves us with one last question for you. Do you recognize yourself in this description? Are you the lone walker in your relationship? And if you are, how have you learned to navigate it? We would love to hear your story. Thanks for tuning in.